Okay, so moving on to the sequester, which is the Republicans have now indicated that they ostensibly have no problem hitting the sequester and going through it. Give me your sense of how this is going to shake down, and also your sense. One of the things we talked about last June was your determination to protect Social Security. When you signed that letter to protect Social Security, did that include fighting against the CPI change?
Yeah, I'm dead set opposed to the CPI change. Indeed, I support legislation that would actually increase the COLA adjustment for seniors, because I've seen firsthand in Rhode Island through the past 5 years, I think 3 of them had no COLA. And in reality, costs for seniors did go up during those years because there's a mismatch between the funding formula that dictates what the COLA is going to be and what seniors usually spend their money on. I'm holding a BlackBerry in my hand. You know, these things, electronics, you've got a laptop in front of you, this stuff gets cheaper every minute. They throw those kind of things into the market basket, but I don't know a lot of seniors in Rhode Island who are buying laptops and BlackBerries. They're buying fuel, they're buying food, they're buying prescriptions, and maybe, you know, toys for the grandchildren and some basic purchases like that. And those are things that have gone up, not down. So I think the mismatch is the wrong way, and I'm opposed to the so-called chain CPI, and I hope we can prevent that from happening.
What's your sense in terms of, I mean, I think the outlook for a grand bargain may have looked very different 6 months ago. To deal with both the fiscal cliff and the sequester, or I should say at least the automatic rescission of tax cuts, Bush tax cuts. So give me your sense of what you think is going to happen now over the next couple of months.
I hope that we can come to an agreement in the Senate that postpones the sequester or perhaps even eliminates it in this 10-year budget horizon. And that we do so using, I think, if we're going to make it bipartisan, there have to be some further spending cuts in there, but that the bulk of it comes from the tax side, from the tax gimmicks and the tax credits and the various tax deals that put money in the pockets of big corporations and very wealthy individuals. There's a lot on that side. The Republicans are saying the revenue side is now done. We did that in the last deal. Well, no. The tax rate question may very well be done, but the tax avoidance question is not done at all, and that is potentially near $200 billion a year in corporate.
When you say tax avoidance, are we talking about tax expenditures, or are you talking about loopholes, or a combination of the two?
A loophole isn't a tax expenditure. It allows people to put money in their pockets as if it were appropriated by reducing it off of their tax burden. So that's my target, is to have a bill that, relying primarily on tax gimmicks and eliminating them, is able to get rid of the sequester. And then what you have is the Senate with a bipartisan bill that avoids the sequester, and that to the average American seems fair because these tax gimmicks were pretty rotten to begin with. And on the other hand, you've got the House saying, no, we want the sequester. And I think when the House folks have to look around at their defense contractors, at what this does to the FAA, at what this does at home, and knowing that there's a bipartisan Senate bill, that they will own the sequester, they will own the full political effect of it, I think at that point this becomes more of a bluff, and they begin to say, okay, well, maybe we should go with what the Senate has done in bipartisan fashion. So that's the way I hope it turns out.
And when you talk about the hopefully the Senate achieving that, just give me your perspective on what happened in terms of filibuster reform. There seemed to be a lot of momentum for this. From the outside, it appeared that there were 51 votes for reforming the filibuster, but was that the case? Was that your perspective? Do you think there were 51 votes that the Democrats had to actually institute some more serious filibuster reform, the talking filibuster, the 41 votes?
I think there were 51 votes for virtually anything except reducing the Senate to a body where a simple majority would ultimately prevail. I don't think there were 51 votes for that. But in terms of talking filibuster and reversing it for 41 votes, I think Harry went into his negotiations with Mitch McConnell knowing that he had that in his pocket and that his caucus stood solidly with him on all of that. And I think that's the reason he was so successful in those negotiations. I think that this is really it's one of the most dramatic changes in the Senate rules in decades. And we will look to see how it's implemented. But I think that it is a very, very significant step forward. And done
what makes it so significant?
In a bipartisan fashion, and without having the Republican senators have an excuse to completely derail the Senate for months and months and months in either real or feigned outrage over the so-called constitutional option.
Okay, so I understand the argument for having some type of negotiation, but tell me how you think these reforms are going to have a real impact. Because
the two biggest problems are a lot of bodies stacked up in the on the executive calendar waiting confirmation that Harry can't bring to the floor because each one could take 30 full hours of cloture, and he doesn't have 30 hours of cloture for all these nominees. So reducing that time allows him to be able to punch through a dozen on a very, very long day. And not only does that allow that to happen, but it improves his negotiating position about getting a deal that simply allows that to happen. So I think it's going to make a big difference with the hostage pool that the Republicans have kept of both controversial and non-controversial nominees. They just hold them all hostage and use them as bargaining chips. The second thing is that the biggest problem we have is getting to a bill. And now Harry can simply go to a bill. He can move to proceed to it and get on it very simply. The price for that is that the Republicans get 2 amendments, but then so do we. I think that's a fair price. It's a price I've always been willing to pay to get past the motion to proceed. And the last piece, which is not so heralded, is the parliamentarian has told us that once you're in that 30-hour post-cloture period, they're going to say that you get 1 quorum call. And if it's a live quorum call, any efforts to put the Senate into a quorum call after that will be deemed dilatory for purposes of delay. So what that means is that you get into your 30-hour period, you have your quorum call, you show up, you make your quorum, and from then on it is a talking filibuster. And as soon as the talking stops, because you can't go into a quorum call, the presiding officer can call the question and you can vote. So that we'll have to see how that actually works in practice. But in terms of making a talking filibuster a reality, our price is we've got to show up and meet 1 quorum call, and from then on it's a talking filibuster. Before, we had to be present every single available minute
to maintain the filibuster, because they would keep calling continuous quorum calls.
Continuous quorum calls, and we'd have to show up 51 strong, and there would be, there are only 53 of us, and some were pretty elderly, people would be out of town, and they only have 1 who has to be on the floor. So it gave a huge advantage to the minority, and that advantage has now been very significantly dissipated.
And in the event that these reforms, when they come to actually be executed, because there's, I imagine if these are such significant and unprecedented reforms, that we're in sort of somewhat uncharted territory as to how they're being used in practice.
Something of a shakedown period.
Okay. Well, I understand you're out of time, but Senator, I appreciate your spending the time with us talking about these issues, and it's always good to see you.
Sam, it's great to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity.